Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Alexa and Friends. My name is Jeff Blankenburg, and as we do every week, we bring in some interesting guests from around the world of voice to have an interesting conversation about the technology, the future, and everything else. So before we get started, I want to mention that you guys may notice I'm in a slightly different location. I normally broadcast from my home studio in Ohio, but I happen to be in Seattle this week doing some very super secret things. And so I'm using our old Alexa studio, and that's why you're seeing this bookshelf full of cool things sitting here behind me. But that's what's going on. But today we get to talk with the folks from Endel. Endel is one of our Alexa startups participants, and they're doing a lot of very interesting things with AI and sound, thinking about things like, well, you know what? I'm going to let them tell you. As we get into this, we'll dig into all of it. So Max and Oleg, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Certainly. So we're going to spend a good amount of time talking about Endel and what you guys are doing and the technology behind it and the science. But what I like to do when we start these conversations is to ask a couple of silly questions just to give people a feel for who you are and some of the ways that maybe you think as people. So the first question that I always like to ask, and Max, I'll have you go first on this one, and then I'll have Oleg, I'll have you go first on the second one.
All right.
First question I'd like to ask, as you guys have noticed, there's been a ton of new superhero movies released over the last 10 or so years. And I'm always curious to ask people, if you could pick one superpower for yourself, what would you pick and why?
Oh boy, that's a classic one. I think I'd go with reading minds.
Reading minds?
Yeah. It's just so interesting what other people have to think and never tell you about.
Right. Now, is there a reason for that? Is there a point in your life where you found that reading minds would have been incredibly beneficial?
Be honest with you, it was just something from the top shelf of my mind, and it probably has some psychiatric values to my therapist, but I cannot tell you right now. It's just something that popped up.
No, that's
I decided
perfect.
to go with it.
I think reading minds would be very valuable. There's a lot of times where it simplifies things. I know even in like my own personal relationship, right? I'm married. My wife and I would probably communicate a whole lot better, or maybe worse, if we could read each other's minds, right?
That's the question, yeah.
How about you, Oleg? What would your superpower be?
I mean, actually, I do have a superpower. Like, I can sleep anywhere, literally anywhere, any time of day. Because I can take a power nap, whatever, on the floor, and I would have my 30 minutes of sleep anywhere. So that one, like, I count as my superpower.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and I often do that in our studio here in Berlin. I would just go like, okay, guys, I'm gonna go take a power nap, and I just doze off for like 30 minutes. I usually put on my headphones and I do listen to Endel's power nap mode, but even without it, like, I can just switch off. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just blessed with having this.
Very, very fortunate. All right. Well, Oleg, I'm gonna tell a story. Max, I won't tell the story a second time for you, but be thinking about what your answer would be as well.
All right.
I want you to imagine, Oleg, for a moment that you are walking through a large city, maybe Berlin, and you want to get to a restaurant that's one block over. And so your options are you can walk all the way down and around the block, but you do notice that there's an alley that you could walk down. It's rather narrow, but it's a beautiful sunny day. There's nothing looks dangerous or questionable about this alley. But through the alley, you can see the place that you want to go. And so you decide to take the shortcut and you go down this alley. And as you get about halfway down the alley, at the end that you're heading towards in front of the restaurant, emerges a giant horse-sized duck, a very, very large duck, right? And it looks mean, and it doesn't look like it necessarily wants to be your friend. And so as any smart human would do, you turn around and you decide to head back down the way you came, and you'll just walk around to get to your destination, only to discover that end has been closed in by 100 duck-sized horses. So a whole bunch of tiny horses. So I know this is a silly scenario, but what I want to know is, knowing that you probably are going to have a slight battle on your hands, regardless of which way you go now, which way do you go?
And first of all, this sounds like a normal fundraising day to me. That's just how my fundraising looks like. and like, I have this hashtag that I always use when I talk about my journey as an entrepreneur. Like, I use like being CEO hashtag. Like, that's a perfect example. Like, I would certainly hashtag being CEO. No, I would definitely pick horses. Like, and you just stuff your pockets full of tiny little horses. Like, I would just go for the horses.
I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
you're going after the 100 horses. There is no wrong answer here, but for me, going to 100 tiny horses, I imagine just being at a big open park. Maybe there's a nice pond, and you're just walking through the park, minding your own business, and suddenly you're surrounded by 100 normal ducks. That seems scary to me. Just 100 ducks on their own, but angry horses might be tougher. Thank you for that, though, Oleg. How about you, Max? Do you have an answer for that one?
Yeah, I think I'll go with the same answer here. It's just, smaller things are cuter, and yeah, it's
Sure.
definitely easier to deal with them than like the huge duck is, man, it's terrifying. No, it's like a dinosaur.
Yeah, that's probably true. I think it can be pretty mean. Someone in the comments said, well, you should just throw a Pokeball at it and hope for the best.
That's a sound idea. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for that. So one of the next thing that I'd like to kind of journey through with you is you guys are obviously doing a bunch of very interesting work, but it's always interesting to be able to share kind of your backgrounds, where you came from, maybe where you went to university, and get a feel for kind of how you got to where you are today. And then once we get to where you are today, that's where I'd like to stay. I want to focus on the work you guys are doing, the kinds of stuff that you're creating, and then kind of where you see the future going. So who would like to start?
Whatever I can say. Yeah.
All right. Oh, go ahead. I'll let you start. I'd love to hear your background story.
I mean, my background is I was born and raised in Russia in a weird little city called Kaliningrad, which is an ex-German city. It was called Königsberg. So if you look at the map, there's like Russia, then Europe, and then tiny outpost of Russia again. Like that's Kaliningrad. This is where I was born. It's a weird city, it was taken from Germany after the war, so there's still a lot of German names, German architecture, German street names. I mean, and I now live in Berlin, so they can sort of probably set me up for that journey. And there was a lot of appreciation of German philosophy because one of the people who invented German philosophy, Immanuel Kant, he lived and died there. So I went into a university that was named after him, and I mean, whatever. Like you stop a person on the street, they're happy to talk German philosophy to you. Like that's how this city is. It's a tiny city. It's like 500,000 people live there.
Okay.
It's not that big. But from there, I was always fascinated with video games, and I was an editor in what probably is the biggest print magazine about video games in Eastern Europe. And I've spent, I want to say, 7 years doing that. Just flying around the world, being at E3 in LA, obviously, right. And just interviewing people and understanding video games. But then I was naive enough to think that I've learned enough to start building my own digital products. I was like, I've been doing this for 7 years. Like, what could possibly go wrong? And I started my own company, and here I am. For me, it all started with the first iPad because I just had my daughter, and I think she was about 2 or 3 years old when iPad 1 came out. Okay. And one of the first apps I downloaded was Brian Eno's Bloom app. It's this app where you can create ambient music and you cannot go wrong. And she was just tapping away on an iPad. She was creating this beautiful, beautiful ambient soundscape by just, doing whatever she felt like. And I was like, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to go. I want to build digital experiences where you cannot go wrong. And
yeah, very, very cool. That's a cool story. And obviously we're going to get into that ambient sound story in just a minute. How about you, Max? Where did you start?
Yeah, I was also born and raised in Russia, in Moscow, though, and I went to the university here. And throughout my whole life, I've worked with language and music in and around in different capacities throughout the years. In my early 20s, I started a band, which became an international band, like a music band. And I spent like some 5 to 7 years doing that, like as my second job primarily. Traveling around the world and stuff like that. And my first job at that time was like I worked in creative industries, in like advertising agencies, digital agencies, as a writer, as a concept designer, and then as a like creative group head, which like became a huge thing for me. Like for like most like 5 or 4 years in a row, I was only working and touring for my vacations, and it was like work all the way. It was pretty exciting, but I like got burned out a lot, and I decided that I need like a really huge shift in life, doing something significant at last. And that's how I came to the voice industry. So I realized that there is such thing as conversational like design and voice design, and I got really excited about that because I never really, like a couple of years back, I only found out about, like 3 years back probably, and it was so exciting to me that people actually do these scenarios and like create robots that talk to you.
Right.
That I thought that I just wanted to dive into that, and that's how I ended up first in a probably best voice user interface design agency in Russia, and then at Endel, where I happily work right now. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you guys could be here today. And so that leads us to the story about your company and what you guys are doing. So I don't know who wants to run with this, but I would love for you guys to share with our audience kind of the quick pitch, maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes on kind of what your philosophy is, what you guys are working on, and what your business is.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I can take this. When we are asked what Endel is, I usually say, this is a technology that is built to help you focus, relax, and sleep. That's it. Like the way we do that, Elizabeth, is a little bit more complicated than that. The way we do that is we procedurally generate a soundscape in real time, on the spot, on the device, personalized to you based on a number of inputs that we collect about you. So we plug in information like the time of day, the weather, your heart rate, your movement. We're working on implementing your calendar as an input. So we plug all of this data into the algorithm, and it creates a soundscape in real time. So when in one of our products, you either press or you say, hey, Alexa, help me relax, what you need to keep in mind is nothing that you hear is pre-recorded. It is being generated on the spot, personalized to you.
That's cool. And it's interesting to me that someone whose superpower is the ability to sleep at any time is the one creating a technology to help people sleep. I think that's amazing.
Makes a lot of sense, right?
All right. So can we dig into the science? I mean, our audience is generally pretty technical, and I think it would be really interesting to talk about how this works. And for those of you that are interested or watching, here I can actually throw this up on the screen really quickly. Let me just create it. I do that, and then I hit that, and then I do this. This is their website, endel.io. And if you guys want to see some of their website's very interesting. It has a lot of the explanation behind the science and how things work and how they think about a lot of this. But I thought it might be good for you guys to share that. But I thought if people want to see your website, they can find that as well.
Well, yeah, for sure. There's two scientific pillars behind Endel. One is the science of the circadian rhythms. We all have that internal clock that is built into our body that regulates the phases through which you're going during the day. You know how you feel alert in the morning, then you feel like sleepy around lunchtime, then you feel alert again. That is regulated by your circadian rhythm. And if you look at the graph, like there's peaks and there's this natural energy drops during the day. It looks like this. And that graph is affected by your sex, your age, obviously time of the year, the exposure to natural light, like how much natural light you're exposed to, so which means the weather basically, and also your chronotype, of course. When you usually wake up, when did you wake up today? So that's one thing. So by using circadian rhythms, we understand where you are right now in that master circadian graph, right? Like, is your energy going up or down? And then, of course, the question becomes, how do we help you, or how do we support you on that journey? And then that's when the second scientific pillar comes in, which is the neuroscience of how sound influences your cognitive state. There's a lot of research out there about this, so we're tapping into this research. For example, we're using things like the pentatonic scale, which is known to be very easily processed by the brain and is actually found in the majority of traditional music throughout the world. We're using things like sound masking, like a combination of various colored noises, like pink noise, white noise, brown noise, stuff like that. We've recently published a white paper actually on Amazon Science. It literally is published over there, which talks about specifically about how Endel real-time soundscapes affect your ability to concentrate. So what we've had is actually we've recruited about 80 people. They were wearing this, EEG, like brainwave activity measuring bands. And they were then using Endel focus mode while wearing those bands, trying to do, whatever, their task of choice, like primarily working. And we would measure their brainwave activity. And then we would ask them to do the same, but then listening to, the most popular focus playlists on all of those streaming services, like music streaming services out there. And like, long story short, like, we're beating all of that. Because if you look at someone's brainwave activity when you're listening to a static playlist, it looks like this. Like a certain song kicks in and works for you, but then another one starts and it just doesn't. And then you basically have these peaks and then you have these drops, and it's very distracting. And with Endel, maybe even certain concentration peaks are not as high, but then what matters is consistency. Like, we bring you into the zone and we keep you there. So that, like, because the reason we even decided to, design and have that study is because we've been looking into a lot of studies out there on which specific frequencies, scales, and tones help you concentrate more.
Yeah.
And those studies, most of them are like, well, Bach makes you more relaxed, while AC/DC or Queen makes you more energetic. We're like, breaking news. That is kind of obvious, right? But what else is there? And it turns out like not that much. And here, we were actually able to zoom in and see your brainwave activity and how it correlates with what you're hearing right now on a second-by-second basis. And that allowed our sound engineers and designers, sound designers, really, understand how specific rhythmic structures or how specific scales and tones influence your cognitive state. So we're basically, we're in almost, I want to say, uncharted territory here.
Yeah, I like that, and yeah, I would imagine that AC/DC would be harder to focus than Bach. I think that's a pretty reasonable assumption. Very, very, very interesting. So, as you dig into this, I mean, it sounds to me like you guys are applying a lot of very complex science to this, right? I mean, if we're getting into measuring EEGs and those kinds of things, someone in the audience even mentioned that they were one of the 80 people that.
Oh my God!
Oh, really? Wow.
Do you guys know John Gilliland?
We did not host that research. Like,
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
it was independent.
A company called ArcTop that did that in partnership with us. It's precisely, I mean, for obvious reasons. So, like, I mean, we would be like, do you like it? Well, we say the Endel is better.
Yeah. No, that's one of those science. So I have a degree in psychology, and so I spent a lot of time in these kinds of studies with people early on, and just the act of observing and communicating with your subjects is enough to skew the results dramatically. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. All right. So as we talk about what your business does, right? There's apps across the board, right? You have them available for all the mobile platforms, but also on Alexa. As you think about the soundscapes that you're building and the opportunity you're giving people to focus and relax and potentially sleep, what do you guys look at as like the next step? Like, what are the things that you view as, okay, we've got this cool technology. Are there things that you're looking to try to improve on that, or are there things that, like, beyond that you're trying to reach out to? And the reason I ask this is because for me, I have a little bit of, you guys familiar with the term tinnitus? It's like ringing in the ears. So I have found that pink noise, I know you mentioned some of the color noises earlier, but pink noise actually cancels out the frequency of the tinnitus in my ears and makes it significantly easier to sleep. And it was only just by like flipping through the different colors that I was all of a sudden like, I can't hear it. It's gone.
Wow.
Like the noise was amazing. Now it's not a bad case of tinnitus, but it's still like I can hear it all the time. And so I just find that stuff kind of incredibly interesting. I just had to do my own kind of exploration to find some of that stuff. But I think it's very curious, and something I'm going to spend some more time with Endel on is the idea that there maybe is a step beyond that, right? Not just color noise, but this kind of soundscape idea tailored to my needs. I think this is fantastic. So back to my question, where do you guys go from here?
Oh boy.
Well, I can give you, here's what I suggest. I can give you like the big picture, and I pass on the mic to Max so he can talk about like our voice experience specifically. In terms of big picture, the way we're thinking about Endel is we're thinking about this as an always on soundscape, which basically means that, you would create, in an ideal world, you would press play, and Endel would just, follow you everywhere during the day across all of these channels and platforms we're available on. And sometimes you can barely hear that, sometimes it's just what I call microdosing on Endel almost, just going about your day, and it just adds this little bit of color to your life. And sometimes it's like front and center, and it shields you from the rest of the world when you try to concentrate, for example. Sure. That to me, and because we're going into different domains and different activities, like we're offering soundscapes for concentration, relaxation, sleep, power nap, meditation. And right now, you as a user, you need to proactively choose what kind of soundscape do you want right now. Mm-hmm. In an ideal world, to me, you just press play once, and it just follows you everywhere, and it adapts, and it changes, and it suggests certain soundscapes depending on whatever is going on in your life.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's how I'm thinking about this. So everything is sort of, it blends and it follows you everywhere. But voice experience is obviously front and center here. Like, we believe it's, there's no version of the future of Endel without a voice experience. And here I'm passing the mic to Max.
Yeah. And as Oleg said, we are envisioning a future where Endel is like omnipresent in your life, and there's a couple of use cases that are just so good, work so good with voice that we could not even think of avoiding them. And we really think that Alexa is such a great thing to bring Endel into your home and into your car, for example, those safe spaces of yours. That it just makes a lot of sense for us to be there, because it's actually kind of a rare product nowadays that really makes sense in voice. Like, not all of the products are fit for that, even though a lot of products think they are trying to go there because it's a hot thing nowadays. But Endel, it really is like a hugely more convenient when you're just at your home and you're getting ready to sleep, and you say like, Alexa, start Endel and play Sleep Till 8 a.m. Like, bam, there you got it. And you just wake up to a beautiful alarm, like really nice after like 8 hours of sleep with pink noise, no tinnitus, nothing, all beautiful and nice. So yeah, that's what we are shooting for right now. On a more like tactical side of things, we really want to create a truly like beautiful and convenient voice experience for people at their homes, and more probably in their cars as well in the nearest future. But right now we are really concentrated on creating really like something really useful, and that you can go about using in your daily life, and like getting what you need and feeling the beauty of the product.
I like this. I spend a decent amount of time thinking about very similar problems to what you guys are focused on. So one of the things, I've given this talk a number of times, but the idea that the voice assistant, or just let's just say the artificial intelligence that lives behind all of that, is on board, active, and thinking about my current context, my current scenario at all times, right? So some of the examples that I like to use are, if you're somebody that isn't, well, at this point, it's almost any adult, right? You have bills that you need to pay. Yeah. You have your water bill, your electricity, all those kinds of things. I'm someone that doesn't want to spend the time to pay my bills. Of course, I'm going to pay my bills, but I don't like the time that's involved in thinking about that, the mail and doing all. I don't want to do any of that. It feels like there there's an opportunity for artificial intelligence to be able to recognize, hey, it's time to pay this bill. I'm going to take care of this thing for you. And sometimes we can set that stuff up with your banking software or whatever.
Yep.
But more often than not, that still requires a lot of effort on my part to make sure that things are set up and managed. And above and beyond that, what happens if I have $1,000 in bills, but I only have $900? What decisions need to be made at that point to decide who and what is going to get the money when? And it feels like there's a future there that kind of offloads some of those things on me. The other examples I like to use are scheduling dentist and doctor appointments. I don't want to do any of that. Now, I want to go to the dentist and I want to make sure I'm healthy and go to the doctor, but I don't want to think about, like, is it time to schedule the appointment? I don't have to call them and compare schedules and figure out, like, I just want all that to magically happen. And my social life is another big thing. There are so many times, especially, now that we're coming out of this pandemic a little bit, there's a lot of times where I haven't seen someone in 6 months, 8 months, a year, but they're still very good friends of mine. And as you and I both probably have experienced, sometimes it's hard to schedule time with your friends. Everybody has their own lives and everything else is going on. It's like, hey, let's get together on Friday. Oh, I've got my kids' play practice, or, like there's just stuff that's going on. And it feels like if I had an assistant just running in the background, knowing everything that's going on with me in my life, it would be really, really useful to be able to have it say, like, I look at my calendar, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting together with Max and Oleg on Friday. That's great. Like, but you didn't plan it. I didn't plan it. The assistant planned it for us. And now we're just getting together at a pub someplace. I think that kind of stuff is really exciting to me. And it sounds like you guys are headed down that same path of, like, contextual observation and engagement, where what's going on. Like, you probably wouldn't want a lot of soundscape noise when someone's in the middle of a conference call.
Of course, that's the big idea.
When that call's over and they're meeting with their boss, or, like, let's get really deep on the context, right? It was their weekly one-on-one with their manager. That's the time when you probably want to, like, all right, man, it's time to relax after that call, because I'm sure that the stress and everything was kind of amplifying as they were in there. So very, very, very interesting. I think that contextual idea is really the future, and it's kind of cool to see you guys thinking about it.
That's exactly how we're thinking about it, and even more so, like in that boss meeting example, right? Like, we would be looking at your average resting heart rate BPM, for example, and then we would be comparing that to your current heart rate, and then, like, we know you've been sitting, you've been talking, but your current heart rate went, like, above, say, 100 BPM, whereas, like, your average resting is whatever 65 or 60 BPM. That alone tells us a lot. So we could be like, okay, let's help you, let's wind you down after this call. And there's tons of examples like this where input data, helps us understand the context of what's going on around you. And, like, take Alexa, right? Like, it has a microphone. Like, what if through Alexa we could understand how many people in the room? Like, are they sitting, standing, walking, talking? Is one conversation happening? Is multiple conversations happening? Should we be creating a sound environment for people to comfortably having a few of these conversations? Like, is that a dinner? So all of that.
Yeah, I really do believe that's a future. And there's a couple of people in the chat also kind of saying the same thing, where, like, the idea that offering some context to some AI can make such a dramatic improvement. Now, there's the flip side of that also, and that's something that I'm very conscious of, is the privacy and security and trust that comes with offering that context, right? But I think that that's something that we're going to continue to grow into. I don't think that anyone 20 years ago imagined they'd be carrying a camera and a microphone around in their pocket all the time, but here we are, right? So I think it's just something that people have to find enough utility in that it's worthwhile for them to do.
True that.
And as this utility continues to grow and people realize, like, oh my gosh, I mean, how many humans wouldn't love to have a real human personal assistant just, like, trailing behind them, making sure that everything's handled, taken care of, and they can just focus on the things that are important. I don't think anybody would object to that. So how do we get software to be as likable as that concept, right? Because I think everybody looks at the rich and famous and says, I want a team of assistants that handle everything, right? It's a very interesting future we're headed towards.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, you got it absolutely right. That's our lane here.
Cool.
And
go ahead. Sorry, Max, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. Let's keep talking.
So as we as we continue on, and maybe, I mean, we've talked about what you guys are thinking about, right? The idea that we can start to compose sound that mixes into people's lives as you start to build on that context. What are some of the things that stand out to you as we think about the future of AI and machine learning? Are there things that you specifically are looking forward to? Maybe not even necessarily related to your business or your focus, but I gave you the examples of like the dentist office or scheduling social outings. Are there things that you look forward to as you see the future of this technology and say, man, I can't wait till that happens, or this is going to be really interesting for me?
Oh, I mean, I can tell you, like, I have a long wish list. We're working with this day to day, and I can tell you, even like stuff like composing music is not there yet, because all of the AI composed music, like synthesized. I'm not talking about like the approach that we are taking, and like I'm gonna get a little bit nerdy here. So the way Endel works, right? Like, is we have this huge library of what in professional jargon is called stems, like tiny little sounds, like 1 second long, or sometimes like up to say 10 seconds long. And we have like a huge library of those stems. And what the algorithm does, it picks the right stems in real time, depending on what the inputs are, like splices them together, overlays them with some post-processing effects. And then there's a few AI systems on top of that that generate melodies like MIDI sequences. And then those MIDI sequences get randomized, and then they are being played by various instruments that we have added to the system. So we are not synthesizing sounds, because once you start trying to synthesize sounds in real time using AI, you get a lot of frequencies and noises and glitches that, I mean, I may like in certain types of music, but they're certainly not suitable for concentration or relaxation even. And like all of the artists that are actively working with AI, I've just recently participated in a panel where Holly Herndon, who's like one of the, she's one of the artists who's like working on the forefront of using AI in music composition. She's like, if you're comfortable with glitch sounds, like you need to be comfortable with glitch sounds today to be able to work with AI composers and like all of those ML systems. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the day where we can, actually synthesize sounds in real time using AI, but we're not by far not there yet.
So it's still a composition game for you today rather than synthesis.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. How about you, Max? Is there anything that stands out to you? I mean, you mentioned earlier, and I didn't dive into it, but that you were a musician in a band.
Yeah.
I would imagine that this is kind of near and dear to you as well, as someone that has created music and performed it even internationally. So what are your thoughts on this?
I'm a little bit of an old school guy in this sense. I mean, I still believe that, at least the kind of music that I'm into and that I was doing, it should not be messed around with the computers. It's something that, like, human brain is only able to conceive and stuff like that. I know it's pretty unpopular in a lot of circles, but I still don't find a lot of reason for that to be like that commonplace. The thing that Oleg talked about, the synthesizing part of the machine learning algorithms is really important in this kind of creating soundscapes and helping people create avant-garde music. But I still think there is a place for good old music created with human hands. But what I'm really looking forward to with this technology is actually something along something into my alley, right up there. I really want machines to start understanding language better. That's something that we really need, and I don't think that it's really around the corner, to be honest with you. But that's really exciting. I mean, the semantics and the pragmatics of language is not yet really understood by the machines, and machines cannot hold context for like more than a couple of turns still. I mean, massively within the consumer devices, and that's really exciting to my mind. I think it's this is going to be a game changer someday, and it's really exciting to think about to have a proper conversation with the machine. Yeah.
So let's unpack that, because I'd like to understand better what you meant by that. You said that computers aren't very good at understanding humans yet.
Yep.
And,
yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I get what you're saying. We're talking about a more advanced understanding than I think.
Of course, most about understanding, not not recognition and intent.
I've actually been quite amazed by how far we've come in the recognition game.
That's true. Absolutely,
it's absolutely amazing. But I'm with you on the understanding. I mean, the ability for a computer to actually understand what you said and be able to generate a reply as a result of that is a very, very hard problem.
Yeah, that's untrivial. Mm-hmm.
But I think those are things that we're going to continue to see advancements on. There was someone just asking me this morning about how can I auto-generate responses to something that a human says. So like we use the standard recognition models that we see, and we say, oh, they said, what's your favorite kind of cat or something, right? Some innocuous question. Being able to generate an answer to that question systematically, right? That we're not talking about having pre-written answers that we feed to a user, but instead we're talking about being able to actually understand and generate that answer. That is a significantly harder problem for sure.
Yeah, well, there is GPT-3, which people think is really going to change it, and it really shows a lot of promise. And I'm really interested in how this model continues developing, because there's been a lot of good examples of how it expanded the way that machine seemingly understands conversation in a lot of ways.
Yeah, GPT-3 is a quite interesting advancement, and the promise that it offers. Right, I think there's been a lot of very niche, very specific tools that have been able to generate text based on a specific genre or whatever. But the idea that GPT-3 can do this with anything.
Yeah, with the whole internet.
Right. That's absolutely remarkable to me.
True that.
And it still feels futuristic. It's one of those things that's on my list to go play with as soon as I possibly can. But I haven't had the chance just yet.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I think that's probably the next step for a lot of voice enabled devices and voice platforms as well. I mean, quite possibly. So we'll see about that.
Yeah. So we've talked a good amount about what you guys are working on and kind of where you think things are headed. Are there any other advancements in AI? I mean, we just talked about kind of speech generation a little bit. Are there other things in the field of AI or ML that interest you or that you're excited to see kind of flip? I mean, I don't know how deeply embedded you are in some of the research and science that's going on behind the scenes, but I'm always curious to get people's perspectives when you think about what the next big things are going to be and what you have your finger on the pulse of.
Max, what about you?
Honestly, I'm still really looking forward to a good self-driving car. To this thing really,
I'm with you.
Really hitting the spot. I mean, it's kind of obvious. I wanted to be a little less banal here, but that's really something that we all need. I mean, we all have driven with taxi drivers in our lives, and I think we can do without it at some point.
It's interesting that you call out the taxi example, because that's maybe that's a conversation we can have, because that's the natural extension that I go to.
Yeah.
If we truly have self-driving vehicles and they work the way that we think that they will, do we still own cars?
I think we do not own them. I think we car share.
So there are large companies that own fleets of cars. And when you need one, you get one.
That makes so much sense. I mean, it really is it's such a great way to use resources. I mean, I live in Moscow right now, and it has probably the best car sharing system like around the world right now. Wow. And surprisingly to a lot of people, it's really sophisticated and really, really convenient to use. I mean, I just sold my car like 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, probably. And I never even had a thought about like owning a car anymore, because you can go like with a car from one city to another, like easily, even if you want a car for that. And driving around the city is just it's so much more. It's so much easier. And yeah, this really. I mean, I'm with you when you're saying that. A taxi, like the automatical self-driving car, is an extension to the taxi problem, not the car owning problem. Because yeah, I think the driving a car is still like somewhat of something of it's fun. I mean, people,
it is fun.
A lot of people like it. So
yeah. So you said
cancel it.
You said you live in Moscow. Do you live in a place where you can walk to most things?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so I think that's certainly a challenge I see more here in the United States than I do in.
That's true. That's true.
And not that Russia is a small country, but like in when you live in a big city like that, and you have the ability to just walk to the supermarket or to restaurants. I live in a place where it's a 10-minute drive to anything.
Yeah, that's an urbanistic problem. Definitely, you're right about that.
Right.
I mean,
then it becomes a bit of a bigger challenge. Now, I live close enough to things that I can order pizza and food, and they can be delivered to my home. But to really go do anything, I have to get in a car and go somewhere. And so, I do wonder. Like, I like the idea of not owning a car, and as long as there's always one available, I think that I would be very comfortable with that, assuming price points and all that being equal.
It's really.
I tossed around the idea of getting rid of my car and just trying to get a Lyft or an Uber or something like that every time, but it wasn't very cost friendly. It ended up being significantly more expensive to just get a Uber every time.
Yeah, it obviously differs based on your geolocation and your lifestyle, obviously, but there are a lot of upside to it. And yeah, and the self-driving cars are definitely something that I think everybody's looking forward to. And it does seem like it doesn't really seem like a really hard thing to do. I mean, from the machine learning perspective at first, I mean, people thought that it was a kind of a trivial problem, but then it started, and there is a lot of issues with that logistically, and from the point of view of legislative organs and stuff like that. So yeah, we're still not there, and I really hope we get there. At some point.
From my perspective, the hard part of the self-driving process has nothing to do with self-driving cars or the technology. It has to do with the fact that there are also humans driving. If you could get all the humans off the road, I think that self-driving cars would be much easier to do.
That's true.
But I don't think that's going anywhere fast, especially in the United States. We love our cars here.
Of course.
And I can't imagine that anytime soon people are going to be like, yeah, I just won't drive anymore. Like you said, it's fun, right?
It is.
Here in Germany as well. Come on.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, Autobahn, that's the holy grail of Germany.
Yeah, actually, I have a fun story to share about that. The last time I was in Germany, I had to go between downtown Munich and the airport, which is straight stretch up the Autobahn, and it was probably 100 kilometers I had to go.
Yeah.
And I was driving a Volkswagen Golf diesel, and I got on the Autobahn. And I was like, all right, we're gonna see what we can do here. And I got up to, I think it was almost 200 kilometers an hour. I don't know my kilometers very well, but that feels like about how fast I was going. And I passed a car. It was much faster than I can ever drive in the United States. I passed a car, but I was still in the left lane. And in the very far distance, way behind me, there was a car. I could barely even see it, but it started flashing its lights. Yeah. And I said, I don't know. I thought maybe it was an ambulance or some emergency. So I pulled over. And this Audi passed me like I wasn't moving.
Wow.
They were going so fast. I may well, and now still I thought I was going pretty fast. It was about for the folks that are in the United States, it was about 140 miles an hour. I think I was going.
Oh yeah, that's a lot.
But it was I may not have been moving with as fast as this Audi went past me. It was unbelievable, and he was gone before I could blink.
Yeah.
Oleg, do you being in Berlin, do you find yourself out on the Autobahn much?
No,
No.
not really. Yeah, not really. Yeah, Berlin, but Berlin is almost like another country within the country.
Sure.
So like it's very different from the rest of Germany. Yeah, like it's very bike friendly, and yeah, like you can pretty much get anywhere either on the bike or using a combination of a bike, and a public transport system. Really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really use cars much.
Got it. No, that makes sense. Again, if I lived in a big city like that, I probably would be the same way. Storing and parking and paying for a car, that's a lot.
Yeah.
When everything's within a short distance. Someone else in the audience also mentioned that they were curious, would it be possible to have, and this is something maybe for your roadmap, could Endel adapt to traffic conditions and speed that you're traveling? Right?
Yeah, it's like we cannot officially announce anything at this point because like we're covered in NDAs right now. But that is just something we're working on. Yeah,
I mean, it's possible.
That's cool. I love that.
Yeah,
because when I'm sitting in heavy traffic and driving 4 miles an hour, that is the time in which I need the most calming. Because I'm going to lose my mind.
I think we'll be
exactly what we're thinking.
Yeah, we'll make you happy, hopefully pretty soon.
Oh, that's fantastic! Fantastic news. All right, is there anything else you guys would like to share before we wrap up here today?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, and some of the stuff that Max was saying, that they're always. There's certain types of music and just music in general, they're always going to be a human being behind the AI, let's say, behind the machine. And that is exactly how we're looking at things. And that is why, we've been inviting all of these famous musicians and artists to be working with us, right? Like, I mean, you've seen us last year doing this sleep soundscape with Grimes. This year, we've collaborated with a Plastic Man, who's like a world-known techno musician, on a Focus soundscape. There's a new spoken word soundscape coming out next week that we've announced today. So there's quite a lot going on. But what we're doing here, because of that logic that I've explained, right? Like how we have this library of stems. And that library of stems gets assembled by the algorithm depending on what the inputs are. We thought, okay, cool, but what if we were to invite we have an in-house composer, right? Like his name is Dmitry Yevgrafov, and he's a very famous, I don't want to say super famous, but like, let's say an established neoclassical composer, right? But we're like, okay, but what if we were to invite another voice? And that artist, like he or she would create a sound pack, a stem pack, and we would feed that into the algorithm. And then the algorithm would use these artist stems as building blocks to create what we call like a limited edition or like a collaborative soundscape. And this is what we're doing right now. And you will see us doing a lot of that. And my dream is, what we almost call it like a DNA extraction. When I'm talking to artists, I say, we don't need you to record, a music composition. What we want you to do is we need you to almost like extract, like produce some individual sounds for us, but those sounds, they need to have your like trademark, feeling. So people need to recognize that, and that's what we're doing right now. So you will see us extracting DNA from a lot of famous artists that you love, and us building these collaborative soundscapes around focus, relaxation, sleep, hiking, walking, biking. You'll see us doing a lot of that. And that to me is super exciting because, I get to work with some of my favorite artists out there. Right. That's one thing. And then we work with them, almost offering Endel to them as a new instrument, as a new tool. And I always say, look, do not be afraid. Like, you need to think about this as a new music instrument almost. Like, we offer you a framework, but whatever comes out of that framework depends on what you are feeding into, the algorithm.
Good input creates good output.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, I want to thank you guys for sharing all this stuff today. This has been incredibly interesting for me. It's always fun for me to get to talk with folks that are doing things that are new and interesting and kind of innovative. And you guys certainly fall into that. So I really do appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much.
Max and Oleg, is other than your website, endel.io, is there any other place you'd like people to find you?
Alexa, open Endel. That's the gist of it.
All right.
Yeah, and we will be launching our new soundscape the next week, June 17th. Cool. So yes, stay tuned for that.
Very, very cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for being here, and thank you to everyone in the audience for tuning in today. We'll be back again next week with another awesome guest. And Max and Oleg, I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.